You are an evolutionary empath. The world needs your gifts. Hello, sensitive souls, and welcome to my Evolutionary Empath podcast. I'm Stephanie Redfeather, author of the recently released book, The Evolutionary Empath, A Practical Guide for Heart-Centered Consciousness, which hit number 1 on Amazon, US, UK, and Canada. Thank you so much for your support in making this happen. You can pick up a copy of The Evolutionary Empath through your favorite bookseller, in stores, and online. Find out more about it on my website, bluestartemple.org. And while you're there, be sure to download your free copy of my Evolutionary Empath Activation Manual and check out my other products. As you can tell, I'm a little stuffed up, so bear with me as I don't quite sound like myself, but I'm excited to share today's content with you. But first, let's check in with last week's self-care tip. I led you through a guided journey to lower your energetic center of gravity. When it comes to our physical center of gravity, our body is constantly making adjustments to stay in balance. If not, we will literally fall over. With our energetic center of gravity, however, any unsteadiness is much more subtle, and the signals our body gives us when we are out of energetic balance aren't usually as obvious as falling on our face. It requires awareness and practice to recognize when we have come out of balance energetically. Yet the remedy is pretty easy once you identify the imbalance. Lowering your energetic center of gravity helps to reground you, to slow down your biorhythms, and reestablish equilibrium. I invited you to practice lowering your energetic center of gravity throughout the week. So how did it go? How often did you find yourself coming unmoored from your grounding? Or how often did you notice your energetic center of gravity creeping up higher in your body? What signals does your body give you when you start to go out of balance? What activities or state of mind throw your energetic center off balance the quickest? For me, I can go into high RPM productivity mode and stay there pretty rapidly if I'm not careful. I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of drive and ambition, and so especially when I have a lot to accomplish or what I'm doing is really challenging for me or significant, requires a lot of my energy and focus, my system can start to buzz, just buzz from all the energy. And sometimes like butterflies of nervous energy can cause my energetic center of gravity to creep up. The RPMs just cause my internal engine to race and I can come ungrounded. So for me, it's really important that I take a few moments to breathe deeply, drop back down into the seat of my center, slow down my internal tempo, and then re-engage from a more calm, relaxed, and grounded space. So I know that's something in me that I have to watch out for. And so I invite you to look at what are your patterns and what do you need to look out for. For today's new self-care tip of the week, be sure to tune in at the end of the podcast. So last time I introduced you to the concept of embodiment, what it is, why it's important. I talked about spiritual bypass and the dangers of being half embodied. And I just wanted to remind you, I have a new workbook called The Embodiment How-To Manual and Workbook, which will be available for purchase and download on my website next week, roughly around the middle of December. In this workbook, I explore the concept of embodiment in much greater detail, and I created a lot of interactive questions, surveys, assessments, and that sort of thing to really help you personalize the material for you. So I invite you to check that out and purchase a copy if this resonates with you at bluestartemple.org. As this podcast series draws to a close, I want to give you tools for staying in your center and reclaiming your sense of self. So let's dive into that. As empaths, one of our greatest superpowers is being able to merge with other life forms. You've heard me say this a few times. And this gives us access to immense compassion, understanding, and perspective. Yet, the corollary to this is that we often have no idea who we are. it is more common that we abdicate our own throne, drop our anchor into another person, and live life from their point of view. So the idea of separation, or figuring out where we end and the next person begins, can be confounding for empaths. It takes time and definitely practice to pull our energies out of everyone else, reclaim them for ourselves, and then house them inside our own kingdom. Yet that is really what it's going to take. That's exactly the formula to get to know ourselves. Think of it like this. There are 100 people standing in your living room, including you, all shouting at the top of your lungs. There is no way anyone is going to be able to hear themselves, let alone make out what everyone else is saying. But if you leave the room and go into your private soundproof bedroom and talk out loud, you can hear yourself, right? So often as empaths, we don't know who we are. We can't hear ourselves. We have no boundary, so everyone and everything is by default allowed in our space, kind of like free-range cattle. If we have no fence around our land and no gate to deliberately let things in and out, the cattle just get to wander wherever they want to go. So that's kind of how it is when we don't have a conscious concept of or recognition of our own boundaries. Every body, everything, everyone's energy just wanders freely through our space. And then because of that, it makes it difficult for us to discern what is ours. Getting to know yourself takes time, and for some, that means time alone. Possibly time away from relationship or some adjustments as you explore who you are and develop a relationship with yourself. At a minimum, it certainly means making space in your calendar and making it a priority in your life for self-exploration. In my book, The Evolutionary Empath, I offer 10 different activities to help you get to know yourself. And I'd like to invite you to think of it this way. Imagine that you're dating yourself and that you're in the courtship phase. Don't you love that time of getting to know a new beloved? You want to learn everything about them, spend time with them, ask them lots of questions, be close to them, absorb their essence. Well, flip that around and court yourself. So of those 10 activities in my book, I'm going to highlight 3 of them for you here. The first one is simply called 100 Things. In this activity, you write down 100 things you know about yourself. And of course, this will be easier for some than others. When I gave this exercise to one of my highly empathic clients, she just about had a panic attack because she was so estranged from her own being. So here's an example from my own list. I don't like roller coasters because they make my body hurt. Whenever something bad happens, I always blame myself first. I know I need a fair amount of regular time by myself. I love horses. When I'm with them, I don't care about the heat, the cold, being hungry. I don't think about anything else but being in the moment. I am the princess in The Princess and the Pea when it comes to sleeping. I can't sleep on hard surfaces, and I'm very sensitive to noises and new places and textures and the lumpiness of the mattress and all of that. So this just gives you an idea from my own list. It can be anything about yourself, and it may seem a little trite, but honestly, it's a great litmus test to see how in touch you are with your own self. The second exercise I want to offer is a type of energy inventory. I've talked about this concept before of our energy bank account. As empaths, we can be predisposed towards putting everyone else first and putting ourselves last until there's nothing left in our tank. One of my favorite lenses to look at elements in my life through is this particular question. Does this feed me? Or does this drain me? So that's what this second exercise is. For me personally, this question always elicits a clear response. Oftentimes when we are doing something out of obligation or are motivated by someone else's expectations or operating from a codependent frame, the thing, whatever it is, will drain us. So this question is a great tool for discerning what is you from what is not you. as what authentically originates from you is almost always going to feed you. The answer to this question can give you a big clue as to what you like, what you want, what you need, and what you're passionate about. So why don't we give it a test run right now? Think of something in your life, anything. It can be a relationship, your job, it can be an extracurricular activity. Get specific and bring it fully into your consciousness. Let your entire body feel it as though you are 100% engaged in it right at this moment. See it in your mind, feel it in your body, in your energy field. Allow the accompanying emotions to develop and just be with it for a few moments. Now, ask yourself, does this feed me or does this drain me? And let your psyche give you an answer in whatever way makes the most sense. It could be a yes, no. It could be showing you a meter or a gauge. Does this feed me or does this drain me? So what response did you get? If you feel ambitious, I invite you to apply this question to everything in your life, but at a minimum, apply it to the major elements and relationships and see what answers arise for you. This is such a fabulous question to ask yourself. For the third exercise, this one really rings true for me. And this third activity is to look at who you were as a child for clues as to your authentic self. So for this endeavor, I recommend journaling. And I'm just going to give you the questions. You can contemplate them now or write them down and take them into meditation or journal with them. So some of the questions are, how did you play as a child? What activities were you attracted to? How did you respond to people around you? What did you spend time imagining or dreaming about? What were your prized possessions? What did you want to be when you grew up? And if there's more questions you can think to ask, then explore those for yourself. I find this to be so spot on for me because all of the clues were really present for me. So some of those themes that are core pieces of me now include Native American spirituality, horses, love of natural elements like rocks and stones and trees and fur and plants, fantasizing about magical objects or magical experiences, being in nature, climbing trees, exploring, and those sorts of things. So if you want to explore this idea a little more, I actually wrote a blog article about it called Who Were You as a Child?, which you can find on my website, bluestartemple.org. Now, I do need to roll a short disclaimer on this particular activity because there are some people who just don't remember their childhood. Some people repressed it as a coping mechanism. And then there are some people who are walk-ins. And if you haven't heard the term walk-in, it basically means a soul swaps out at some point in a person's youth, usually during a time of crisis or trauma. I have a friend that this is true for, and she doesn't really remember anything about her life before the new soul walked in. So if you don't remember much about your childhood, don't just toss this exercise out, because you can ask a trusted source, such as a parent, aunt, uncle, grandparent, older sibling, somebody who really knew you in those early years of your life. So whether you do these 3 exercises or have my book and do any one of those or your own thing, it's crucial for us as empaths to reestablish our identity. And I'm talking human identity here. So we can locate ourselves on and plug ourselves into our physical existence on the Earth grid. We cannot be effective humans, let alone successful at our soul mission, if we're not in our body, if we're not grounded in our own sense of self and centered in our own sovereign throne. A common theme for empaths, and really for the whole human race, is that we tend to look for validation outside of ourselves. So part of our spiritual maturation process is to move from external validation to internal validation. And this includes things like trusting yourself, staying grounded, remaining centered in your own self, and walking to the beat of your own drum. Another way to think of this is moving from you define me to I define me. And so while learning to stay centered in your own self is a rich and multifaceted journey, I want to give you 4 simple concepts and practices to keep in mind. 1, practice your embodiment techniques. If you are embodied, then you are in your body, and it means you're present in the moment. And if you are fully in your body and 100% present in the moment, then by definition, you're in your center. The more you practice embodiment, the more quickly you will begin to recognize when you are not in your body and therefore not present and not centered inside your own self. Number 2, clear your energy field. You've heard me talk about energy hygiene. As a regular practice, you should be clearing your energy field at least daily, and I would recommend multiple times a day. Use your breath accompanied by an effective visualization, or use a smudge fan and sage to clear your field, or use an instrument like a rattle, bell, or drum. Use any number of techniques I've given you, or whatever you currently do that works for you. I don't care what the technique is. It's just important that you keep your energy field clear so that you can hear yourself and not have it polluted. If you want to learn more tools for clearing yourself as well as clearing energetic space and clearing objects, I have a home study course on my website called The Art and Practice of Energetic Clearing, and it's a really great course to give you those tools. The 3rd practice is find your no. And this is a hot topic in recent years. Finding your no means drawing clear boundaries and saying no when you need to. You can say no to a request from another person. You can say no to the tendency to be a people pleaser. You can say no to beating yourself up. You can say no to addictions or unhealthy habits. In his book, Essentialism, Greg McKeown says, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And so no is one of the key critical tools for having in your toolbox, and especially for being able to stay in your own center and listen to yourself. The 4th practice is asking yourself, is this me? For any decision, behavior, relationship, or issue, the idea is to look for strong resonance. If it resonates with you, it's authentic and should provide a resounding yes to the "does this feed me?" question. If something is not in alignment with your highest good or your current vibration or with your authentic expression of self, then there's going to be some level of dissonance. Another helpful version of this question is this mine? So asking yourself, is this me or is this mine, can really help you discern. And if the answer is no, then it means the thing is probably originating outside of you, such as someone else's expectations. So to recap those 4 tools for helping you stay in your center and live from your own authentic, sovereign being is 1, practice embodiment, 2, clear your energy field, 3, find your no, and 4, ask yourself, is this me or is this mine? Now, while staying centered in your own self involves more than just these 4 steps, they are very helpful in giving you some concrete practices that you can apply daily. I'm going to say that again. While staying centered in your own self involves certainly more than just these 4 tips, these are very meaty, practical, helpful tools for giving you concrete practices that you can apply daily. If we zoom out, hopefully it becomes obvious that today's content, and really the whole podcast series, are all mindsets, practices, activities for helping you move from victimhood to empowerment, from liability to asset, from powerless to potent, from uncertainty to clarity, and from who am I to here I am. As I stated in my book, The Evolutionary Empath, when we own something, we can show up powerfully as that. And I want you standing next to me as the powerful empath I know you are, helping me awaken the world to heart-centered living. Okay, friends, it's time for this week's self-care tip. Get out your PJs and chamomile tea because this week your self-care practice is sleep. Oh, Stephanie, are you crazy? Christmas is in a couple of weeks. There's so much to do. Yes, I know, which is precisely why I'm suggesting this practice. I can almost guarantee you that you need more sleep. If not in general, then at least this time of year for most people. I know you've heard all the research, 7 to 9 hours for adults, yada yada, so I'm not going to bore you with the statistics because I know that you know your own truth about it. So take a minute to ask yourself, are you getting enough sleep? Your system should deliver you a pretty immediate yes or no. For me, my sleep is non-negotiable. My entire adult life, I have needed 9 hours, yes, 9 hours or more a night, and it is really sacred time for me. I don't function well on less sleep, and I actually get panicky if my sleep is threatened in any way. And believe me, I have pleaded with God, please, let me get by on just 1 less hour a night and get the same result. I have so much to accomplish. Think of what I could do with 1 more hour a day. Nope, hasn't worked yet. So I have to get my 9 hours of sleep a night. Now, for a bonus practice, I invite you to create some kind of bedtime ritual to enter consciously into sleep time as a sacred act. It can be as simple as saying a prayer. You could clear your energy field or spend a few mindful moments at your altar. You could take 3 deep breaths or write in a gratitude journal what you are thankful for from the day. And if you're too exhausted right before bedtime that you can barely run a toothbrush across your teeth, then you need to do this ritual a little earlier when you do still have some presence of mind, 30 minutes, an hour beforehand. Creating this type of ritual cues your system that it's time to shut down and to start preparing for slumber. It lets your entire system know that you cherish the act of this precious sleep and that you're giving it to yourself with great reverence. And as always, I'd love to hear any comments or feedback about how it goes, so feel free to message me or post a comment on Facebook. Okay, my fellow sensitives, thanks so much for listening today. Next week is the final podcast in this series. And to bring the topic to a close, I'm going to focus on embracing your mission as an evolutionary empath, what that means moving forward, which also includes redefining our concept of service. So I have some good stuff for you then. I'm Stephanie Redfeather, and if you want to find out more about me, my book, The Evolutionary Empath, or my other products and services, please go to my website at bluestartemple.org. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you like this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Sacred Stories podcast. Remember, my fellow sensitive souls, you are an evolutionary empath. The world needs your gifts.